So, welcome back. Today I'd like to do a very brief discussion about the carbon cycle. And so we talked a little bit about energy cycling, right, and the movement of energy through the ecosystem. And one of the things about energy is that it is never created or destroyed, it's just shifted around. The same is true of matter. And so the carbon that is used to build up our bodies is the same carbon that's been around since the beginning of everything. It just changes shape over and over into different forms. And the way we have it right now is really organized in such a way that it builds up the molecules of our structure. So we got like proteins and sugars and fats, and all those things are carbon-based. And when living things are transferring this carbon from one place to another, it's being passed along the way through consumption and respiration. So this carbon is moving throughout the ecosystem. On the board here, I have a very simplistic, a very beautiful model of the way in which carbon moves as a general idea. And so this cyclical transfer of carbon is the organic carbon cycle. And so there is a certain concentration of carbon dioxide, CO2, in the atmosphere around us, in the air that we breathe in and the air that we breathe out. Right? There is carbon in that carbon dioxide. And that's how we access and pass around most of the carbon. Whenever we eat another living thing, we are also consuming their carbon. And so, when a primary consumer eats the tree, it gets that carbon in the form of the sugars that the tree made through photosynthesis. Once it breaks down that sugar through a process called cellular respiration, it releases that carbon as carbon dioxide. That carbon dioxide is taken in by the plants as part of photosynthesis to make the sugar again. And so between the producers doing photosynthesis and the consumers doing cellular respiration, we have this cycling of the carbon. It goes back and forth. Okay? It goes from the plants to the consumers to the plants, to the plants to the consumers to the plants. The plants are also doing cellular respiration, and they're also releasing carbon dioxide. So that starts building up in the atmosphere. And any time that a consumer or a producer die, right, their carbons are cycled back to their base forms by decomposers. So the decomposers will break down anything that dies, and all those little organic carbons will be broken down to their base forms and released back for work. Right? And now they're also doing cellular respiration, so a lot of them are releasing CO2 as well. Right? That is an organic cycle of carbon, and it keeps things pretty well balanced. Now, as humans, right, who have started burning fossil fuels, such as coal and oil, we have drastically increased the carbon output for this planet. And so the fossil fuels are made out of things that used to be alive. And so all of the carbon that was in those things is being released as carbon dioxide when they are burnt. So in our cars, the gasoline that we are burning release the carbon. In our factories, the coals or the oils that we use release those carbons. Right? And all that carbon ends up in the air around us. And the air can only hold so much carbon dioxide. Right? There is an extent to which there's too much carbon dioxide, and then bad things start happening. Fortunately, the ocean will also hold a lot of carbon dioxide. When I got a lot of carbon dioxide in the air, it's floating over the ocean, it dissolves down into the ocean. The ocean is what's called a carbon sink, like your kitchen sink, right? But for carbon. Large forests, rainforests in particular, are also carbon sinks. They're a place that can hold lots of carbon, which is very important for maintaining the balance of our carbon cycle. Right? We're making all this extra carbon, we need a place to store it. Now, as we cut down more and more forests, we have less and less place to store it. We fill up the ocean, right? It's pretty much saturated with carbon dioxide at this point, which causes something called ocean acidification. All that carbon dioxide is making the ocean more acidic, right, which is not good for fish, not good for coral reefs, killing all of our creatures. Okay. So that's a bad thing about having too much carbon dioxide in the ocean. Okay. Now, too much carbon dioxide in the air is what's leading to a lot of our global climate change, right? That global warming effect. And so they used to call it global warming as a catch-all. It's been shifted to climate change. It's more accurate of a term because it's not always getting warmer in every place. It's not just about the increase in global temperatures. Right? It also increases severe weather patterns. Right? So you mess with the temperatures, you mess with the air pressures, it creates crazier storms. Right? So there's a lot more climate change than just the global warming, but the global warming results in an overall average temperature increase on the planet, and that's caused by the CO2 increases. Right? And so the sunlight comes in, puts some heat in, and it used to just bounce out and leave. What happens now is the sunlight comes in, bounces off the earth, hits this layer of CO2 and bounces back down, and then goes back up and hits the layer of CO2 and bounces back down. And so that heat energy that's contained in that light is staying on Earth longer, it's heating things up more, and it's just messing with the overall climate of the planet. Right? Okay. So that's carbon cycle. Naturally, we have this organic carbon cycle where it's being passed between the consumers and the producers, and that's cool, right? We have cellular respiration releasing CO2 into the atmosphere. The plant's using that CO2 to do photosynthesis and make sugar, so the carbon's now in the sugar. The organism eats the plant, does cellular respiration, releases the CO2, so forth and so on. When any of them die, the decomposers break them down and put the carbon back into the ecosystem in its base forms. However, humans have messed up this whole storyline by burning fossil fuels and overwhelming our carbon sinks so that we have too much carbon in the air. Okay? Yeah. That's it. Carbon cycle. We'll talk about photosynthesis and cellular respiration as processes in the cell unit. So, have a great day. Bye.